Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ismail Bilal Salim, coming to you live from Masjid William Salam. I give this talk on comparative religion. Everything that I say of the truth is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the source of all truth. Only the mistakes and errors are my own. And let me tell you all, in 2 hours, I'm going to be on a panel with my son and I think 5 other people, including my Arabic teacher, on race and religion, on al-Islam and racism, basically, put into context. I'll put the link in. It'll be on Zoom. So if you all are interested in it, feel free to watch. Hopefully I get some good out of it. It'll be sponsored by the Muslim community in Tidewater. So yeah, that should be pretty interesting. And that'll be from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So last week I was talking about facts about Islam, facts about al-Islam. And I was to continue that this week. But I saw something that made me stop and pause and want to address something before I go any further. So probably next week, inshallah, I'll be able to continue with that. But I wanted to address something that I saw this week. It was about this documentary, The Black Church. I think it was sponsored by PBS, Henry Gates. It's called The Black Church. This is our story. This is our song. And the reason I thought it was important to address is because I felt like it was a whitewashing of our history by African Americans, no less. I don't condone any whitewashing of our history. So I definitely don't want to condone it if African Americans are doing it, even if it's unintentional. And it's hard for me to see whether this is unintentional. The reason I say this is because I was very interested in it. I had people recommend it to me, and I definitely want to see how Christianity played a part in our growth. But there was a huge part that was missing, a couple parts that were missing from this. And it was told as if Christianity was the religion of those who were enslaved, or the Africans that were enslaved, or it was their choice. Now, when you watch this documentary, you will notice that some things are omitted if you know the history. And you will realize some things don't make complete sense. And the reason they don't make sense is because some things are not being told in this story. Now, I have told you about this before, so this is why this is near and dear to my heart and why I felt it necessary to address it. Let me first tell you about a story. It was a story of my father when he became a Muslim. He had a book, and I put this on my Facebook page. He had a book, and it had the picture of Muslims making salat. And he was telling everybody in his family about this religion of al-Islam. And he was, trying to show them the importance, the depth of al-Islam, and maybe they would be interested in it. And everyone kind of shunned him, said, I'm a Christian, I have a different religion. The only person that showed him some support, at least as this is from his own mouth, was his grandmother. His grandmother saw that picture and she said, first she gave him encouragement to continue with his path. And she said that she and they used to pray that way. And her parents taught her to pray in the same manner that Muslims pray. And she said there was a big barn that they used to pray by and a large pot. I don't know if any of you all have read my book, Islam is the Truth. in that book, I talked about this story because, and I can't remember whether in that book I put the pot in the story because I didn't understand what the pot meant. Why she said she prayed beside a large washing pot. I thought about the barn. I figured they were praying in the barn in secret. So I'm watching this documentary, The Black Church, and it's talking about them being beaten for praying, for the ministers preaching, and that they bowed down in the same manner as Muslims bow down, and they were praying with their faces to the ground, and their words were being muddled or muffled by this large washing pot. Then I understood. Then it connected. I mean, my father told me this probably 20 years ago. Then it finally connected to me. I knew then that they were praying Salat. They were Muslims. This is the point of this whole thing that I'm trying to tell you here. The people that were praying, those Africans who were enslaved, were praying as Muslims. This is why it was necessary to muffle their words. Just think about it. Think about this. This is the story that is being told here in this black church. They teach them, first they didn't want to teach them religion, is what they said. They teach them Christianity. The reason they had reticence to teach them Christianity was because they didn't want to have other Christians in bondage. So the reason they allowed them to was because of how they taught Christianity. They said that black people, Africans, are sons of Ham. And according to Noah, then they should be slaves. So teaching them Christianity, how you doing, mama, was a means of subjugating them. So it made no sense in this documentary for them to be whipping them, beating them, and them secretly praying when they are praying as their master told them to pray. There was a scene of a lady who was walking through a gravesite, and she was talking about Bilal Muhammad, saying explicitly that he was a Muslim. And then it transforms as if those people on those ships coming from Africa were Christians. Let me be explicit. None of them were. Probably 0.001% of them had ever even heard of Christianity. Christianity was in Eastern Africa, but Western Africans, the largest portion of them, the largest religious group, were Muslim. The rest of them studied and practiced an African indigenous religion. None of them were Christians. So in order for them to learn Christianity, they had to be taught it. They had to be forced to pray that way, to believe the things that they believe. This is an actual fact that was not illustrated in this story. That's what I'm talking about, the whitewashing of it, is because when people attack Christianity and say Christianity is not true because slaveholders use Christianity, I say that's not the case. You can't say Christianity is false because someone used it incorrectly. But I'm also not going to allow people to say that Africans came here as Christians or that they chose Christianity. None of them chose it. Do you hear me? For 300 years, it was forced on them. They were made to understand this because they were most likely Muslims. That's why they were bound down praying in the manner that they were praying and why they were being beaten for praying. You understand what I'm saying? This is why this is important. And this is why they were hiding this. And this is why they were being monitored. There was a decree that they couldn't bring any more Muslims from Africa to the Americas because the Muslims were so rebellious and getting other people to rebel. So what they had to do was force Christianity on them. They whipped them and beat them until they said, "We are Christians." And the thing of that is they still didn't accept it until generations into slavery. And the more they brought people, the more they learned more that they were Muslim. Kunta Kinte was a Muslim. I know we joke all the time. We have made it into a caricature to say Mandingo or Mandinka. They were Muslims. They were knowledgeable, Arabic-speaking Muslims. The Wolof, all of them were Muslims. All right, when you see Amistad, those people praying, they were making salat. None of them had a cross on. They never heard of Jesus. They never heard of him. So in order for them to believe in it, they were forced to believe in it. Now I'm going to tell you another story. And this is something similar to what happened to us. And again, it was Africans. So the Moors, African Muslims, conquered Spain for 700 to 800 years. And then Spain gained power and defeated the Moors. And the Moors were then called Moriscos. And they said they were forced to accept Christianity. So they said, yeah, we're Christians. But what happened throughout those years is they kept catching them being Muslim. They were only being Christian by persecution. They were putting them in jail. They were whipping them. They were killing them for practicing al-Islam. Right? I'm trying to show you how powerful this religion is, that they want to suppress it. Okay? So for years, they realized that these Moriscos, they were still Muslim. They were just pretending to be Christian. So ultimately, they said, listen, we tired of this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to send you back to Africa. And what did the Moriscos do is they called the Adhan in the streets. They said, well, since you already caught us, we can come out of the closet. Yes, we've been Muslims this whole time. We've been faking. The only way Africans in Spain and in the Americas accepted Christianity was through the whip. They forced it on us for centuries and centuries. And when more ships came bringing African Muslims, they had to be forced over and over again. I was just looking at a tweet from a man named Michael Harriet. He said in 1792 in Georgia, they made it illegal to worship God. Think about that. The people on the plantations were already practicing Christianity. What they were making illegal was worshiping Allah, worshiping someone other than Jesus. So every time they brought a ship, they were bringing more Muslims, people on there who were going to fight them, not accept this dormant or this docility and believe that they are meant to be slaves. Because this religion of Islam is a religion that is a revolutionary religion. It's not a religion of docility. It's a do something way of life. It's no complacency in it. So even when the Arabs, who were saying that the Arabs that were Muslim, they didn't teach Africans al-Islam, because you know what would have happened if they would have done that, if they would have taught them al-Islam, they would have fought them and killed them. This religion is a self-defense religion. It is a religion that says oppression is worse than death, which is the equivalent of saying freedom or death. Something's going to happen. I cannot allow myself to be oppressed. Is the reason why they wanted to stop them from practicing Islam. They made a law saying, don't bring Muslims here. You understand that? And those slave revolts, the Haitian revolt, was led by Muslims. The Maroons, those Muslims those slaves that escaped slavery and built their own kingdoms. Built their own civilizations outside of the plantations. A large majority of them were run by Muslims. All right. And this is not me talking. This is, if you look at Edward Blyden, Islam, Christianity, and the African American, I believe is the name of it. This man is a Christian saying those people were Muslim. All right. You see, the reason that they taught them this religion of Christianity not only was the idea of Noah and the idea that that Cain and Abel, that Cain had a stain on him that was black skin, and that Ham was destined, was stained, was cursed to be a slave. But also they had a religion that says, look for the hereafter. Don't worry about what's happening to you right now. It's a religion that somewhat, I'm trying to say this with all due respect, passes the buck. It says Jesus will take care of it for you. So do you understand why this was given to slaves or to Africans who were enslaved? To make them docile, make them not want to fight, make them just pray and hope God will come and save them, or hopefully when they make it into heaven, they will be redeemed. So they were saying in this documentary that the stories would inspire those Africans. And I believe that is the case. So I'm asking you, what group of people in the Bible were enslaved? What did those people do? Did they stay in the place that they were enslaved? Did they stay in Egypt? The children of Israel were enslaved. When they were freed, they ran away. They didn't stay in the place that they were enslaved. They did not assimilate. They didn't keep their slave name. They didn't want to work for the people who enslaved them. They didn't ask for recognition as a human being or the rights of a human being in a nation in which they were slaves. They didn't ask their former slaveholders for jobs or to drink from the same water fountain as them. They went back home to reestablish what they had lost. They wanted to reclaim their name, their culture, their way of life, their religion. They wanted self-determination. So I'm asking you, how can you get self-determination when you are in the extreme minority? African Americans make up about 12% to 13% of the population in America. That means, at a maximum, I was talking to my brother Abdul about this, at the maximum, we should be 12% of everywhere. We should be 12% in the workforce, 12% of CEOs, 12% as the business owners, 12% of politicians, what have you. Which means self-determination is a pipe dream because we still are the minority. If we want to be inspired by the story of the children of Israel, then we should flee tyranny. We should flee oppression to some place where we are the majority. Listen, we are already doing what the children of Israel did. If you read the stories of the Bible, they didn't listen to their leaders. Marcus Garvey told you 100 years ago to get on that Black Star Line and get back to Africa. The Nation of Islam was telling you to get your own separate land, get something separate, right? Did we listen to them? And without our leadership right here in our faces, we go astray, just like the children of Israel. And like the golden calf. Remember, the children of Israel made a golden calf in the place of God. What have we done but put Jesus or Isa alayhi salam in the place of God? In the same manner, we put a part of creation and worshiped it instead of worshiping the Creator. We are already living out this life of the children of Israel. The children of Israel, it says in the Bible that they murmured. They murmured so much that God left them and left them selfish, ungrateful people out in the wilderness, wandering, lost. Telling you, this story is already happening. The children of Israel complained about the food that they had and about the conditions in the wilderness. And they said, maybe we should go back. We should have stayed in Egypt. Well, us African Americans right now want to stay in the place that was oppressing us. We never want to leave the place that bears the tears and blood of our foreparents. We are walking around and working on the ground that our ancestors were whipped on, were raped on, were murdered on. Where white supremacy is in every facet of our society, including doctors, lawyers, police officers, the military, governors, senators. In the 21st century, a white supremacist was the president. Let us remember that our ancestors, those Africans who were enslaved, prayed earnestly to return back home. Yet we pray to make this place our home, a place where white supremacists are in the government, are leading the country. I saw an article about Stevie Wonder. He said, we pray so people will like us, that people will treat us fair. This is the man. Remember, this is the man who made songs about love and how love conquers all and how love is the medicine, the healing that we need. He's given up. He said, I'm moving to Ghana. But we want to remain colonized. We think and live like people who hate us. We want to still bear our slave holders' names. Like a former prisoner who still goes by his prison numbers. I saw on a video from one of the exonerated five, Dr. Yusuf Salam. It touched me tremendously. Remember in the exonerated five that Donald Trump was one of the people who put an article, I think a $50,000 news ad in the paper to reinstate the death penalty just for these five brothers. Well, one of them is Dr. Yusuf Salam. And he has this book called Punching the Air. And he was talking in the book about his grandmother and his grandmother's church, talking about returning to Africa. And his mother is Muslim. She said he needed to return to Africa so he can connect with his brothers and sisters, Muslim brothers and sisters in Africa. So the grandmother, Salam Alaikum, was talking about going back to Ghana, going back to a place in Senegal called Gorée Island. And this is what he writes. He says, and there would be a place called the Door of No Return. It's where slaves had to go through to get to the ship sailing to America. It's where African people lost everything and stepped out into a future that they did not know. So he's talking about his own case. He says, so when the officers opened the door leading out of the courthouse, I thought of the door of no return. My life, he says, my whole damn life, before this courtroom, before this trial, before this night was just like Africa. And this door leads to a slave ship. And he says, and maybe jail is America. I saw Pharrell on the show which traces his ancestry, again with Henry Gates. And it was a very, very powerful segment. So powerful that they said they had to stop recording and come back later to finish the recording because Pharrell was so distraught. But he saw where he got his last name from. He saw that he got it from an evil, cruel, and wicked woman who beat her slaves, her enslaved Africans, beat one man to death. Her name was Mary Williams. Now I'm asking you, why in the world would Pharrell want to keep this woman's name when he knows for certain she was a cruel and brutal slaveholder? And when I'm asking this about him, I'm also asking about you. Why do you want to keep that prison number? Why do you only want to know English, the language of the colonizer, the people who enslaved you? Why don't you want to know your language, your culture, your way of life, the religion that you had? If you were not taken from Africa, your name would be Muhammad, Nasir, Isa, Musa, Ibrahim, Dawood, Ismail, Mustafa, Abdullah, Malik. Your names would be Khadija, Maryam, Isha, Isa, Swiya, Nadia, Saisha, Naisha, not John, Joseph, Bill, or Jack and Jill. Names that have no meaning, no merit to them. You would know multiple languages. You would have never drank or smoked. You would be married. You would be praying 5 times a day to God. This was stolen from you. So why don't you get it back? They replace something you have with something not as great. So when you see this documentary again, remember that something is omitted. In fact, the first church they have, the African Methodist Church, has Arabic written on the chairs. That is nothing but your ancestors trying to remind you, do not forget this al-Islam, this Islamic root that you have. This is why when I say these words to you, they resonate. My father said when he would listen to Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, when he heard them say Allahu Akbar, it was something that resonated inside of him because it's the truth. That's why it's resonating. What they taught you was not true. They forced something on you and your ancestors after that. This is why you believe what you believe. And this is why they whipped it out of us. Because it is a rebellion. It is the antithesis of what we see in Western society, in white supremacy. This religion, this way of life is nothing but a fight for justice, a fight for peace, a fight until there is peace. So let us resume. Let us get back to our ancestors and our ancestral root. If you came here, when your ancestors came here, they were most likely Muslim. And the whole Western Africa is Muslim now. So even if they weren't Muslims, they were going to be Muslims by choice, not by force. Peace, y'all. Assalamu alaikum.